So as I mentioned this morning, we're looking at diversification and funding for dairy farmers. We do have a slight change to the programme with Jim Shanks from Standhill Farm stepping in for us. But I'll come to Jim in a second. We've also got George Clark, a dairy farmer from Warwickshire. He's going to kick the session off with the success of the Harbury Milk Shed and community engagement. So George, if you would turn on your video and come and join us, and we'll hand over to you to start the first presentation. George.
Morning. Right, morning. I'm George. I'm from a dairy farm in Warwickshire. So we're a little milking around 100 cows. Sort of the farm situation right in the middle of the village. Sort of the village is growing around the farm. We're all sort of all year round calving, keeping all the calves. We've sort of got some beef cattle we fatten. Obviously some followers that come into the herd. So onto the milk shed. I think you can see these slides. This is our logo. We've been thinking of a vending machine for probably a couple of years, really. Sort of umming, was it the right thing to do? Would it work? And so August we started. But before that, we'd sort of done quite a bit of research. We'd found, spoken to a few people that are already got vending machines, seeing how it went for them, what was involved, sort of time it took, etc. It's probably a bit more of an investment than I thought. It was probably a bit naive at the start. I thought we'd just pasteurize a bit of milk in a pasteurizer and bung it in a machine, and off you go. But there's probably a bit more to it than that. So we sort of started off with sort of whereabouts we were going to situate this pasteurizing room, and what was it sort of going to involve. Obviously, you've got to heat the milk up at sort of 66 degrees and hold it there for half an hour, and then you've sort of immediately got to cool it as quickly as possible down to sort of 4 degrees. So we had a word with, we actually had a bit of a meeting with St John from D&D Crystal. They do our parlour and tank. So we got in contact with them. They actually do pasteurizers. He actually came out and gave us some advice on what he thought would be best. Our original pasteurizing room would have involved, where we thought would involve carrying milk around. Obviously, whatever milk touches, it's got to be thoroughly cleaned. So it was just trying to minimise, carrying milk around and trying to make it simple as possible. Trying to not create too much work, really. Also, the idea was to get the wife onto the farm, to get Heather onto the farm. So it was going to be her sort of her little baby to look after, as it were. So in the end, yeah, we decided to have the pasteurising room right next to the dairy. So all we do is unfasten the pipe in the dairy, pump some milk into the pasteuriser, and then it's relatively simple. So yeah, investment wise was we went for a sort of a 500 litre pasteuriser. I think you might be able to see that is there we go. Now I'll just find the slide. Oh, where's my slide gone now then?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway, so we went for a 500 litre pasteuriser. We thought we'd future-proof it. So 500 litres at the minute. We're not filling the pasteuriser every time. We're sort of just doing 200 litres at a time at the minute. So also, keep going. So here we go. Here's the pasteuriser. So yeah, the milk goes into the top of the pasteuriser. We heat it up to 66 degrees for half an hour, and then it cools it down to sort of 3.5 degrees. So here we have we've got these milk tanks that wheel into the vending machine. We fill these up with milk, take them down to the vending machine, and wheel them straight into the vending machine. You can see on there there's everything in the vending. We wheel one of these out, and everything that's dirty gets wheeled out of the machine. So there's nothing left dirty in the machine. So all the cleaning takes place in our pasteurising room. You can just see here, just a quick one. That right hand with the lights on is the water heater and pump. And that big stainless steel tank is actually the water recovery tank. So once the pasteuriser is finished pasteurising, the water then, instead of going down the drain, it does get pumped into, which gravity fed into that tank, so we can reuse it. We reuse it for parlour washings. Vending machine wise, we sort of looked at a few, spoke to a few people. Seems to be a lot of people with the DF Italias. That was the main reason for going for a DF Italia, just because there seems to be a lot of them around. We did actually go for, I'll find it for you. Where's the vending machine going? We did actually go for a bifluid machine. So we've so in the future we could do 2 different types of milk. So at the minute we are just doing whole milk. We went down the pasteurising route because of just because of I think there's a bit more paperwork to be done with the raw milk, and if anyone does get poorly, then obviously you may be in a bit of trouble. So yeah, so the other window there you can see is for if we do a semi-skimmed option. Obviously that is a bit more investment. We would have to buy a separator. And then would people actually come and buy semi-skimmed, or would they just swap from whole milk to semi-skimmed? So it's a bit debatable at the minute whether we would actually sell any more milk, or whether people would just swap to the semi-skimmed. The advantage is we would have some, obviously we'd skim some cream off, we would have some cream to sell. But yeah, it's just sort of just a minute hour at the minute whether that's something that we'll do. So onto the sort of the, so yes, we had a word with the milk station company who supply these machines. They were quite helpful. They also, you know, they do like the whole package really. They do your bottle designing, your sort of, you know, as you can see on there, some stickers. They sort of do the whole lot really. So bottle wise, this is sort of design we went for. The farm is Chesterton House Farm. There is actually a windmill at Chesterton, hence the windmill on the bottle. Obviously for copyright reasons, that isn't Chesterton windmill. It's a windmill that looks similar. So that's what we went for. Obviously the cow in the foreground. Yeah, I thought the branding was quite good. Really, Heather sort of had quite a bit to do with that, the wife. And on the back, there's just a bit about the farm, a bit about the cows. And then you've got to have the usual, you've got to have the stuff that you have to have on the bottle, which is like what's in the bottle. So that's pasteurised whole milk, the quantity, the address of the farm, and sort of the use by date. We do have just used within 4 days of purchase. So then obviously you're not having to stick a use by date onto a bottle every morning. Seem to have sold quite a few bottles. People bring them back to reuse them. People also bring their own containers. So yeah, it seems to work well. We've sort of pushed the reusable, recyclable bottle, which seems to go well. Obviously, plastic is a big no-no, isn't it, these days? Or single-use plastic is a big no-no. So you'd like to think if people are buying the milk, they bought a bottle, they are buying the milk, you know, over the course of a week, they are saving them quite a lot of single-use plastic over the course of a month, over the course of a year. It does seem probably add up really on the reduced plastic really. So yeah, so we got going with it in August, just with the milk. We have sort of gone on to stocking some local cheese. There's some butter in there and some eggs in the other. You can see on the other slide, I think there's another vending machine next to, where is it? That's that top one. There's another vending machine next to the milk vending machine that sells bottles. We've got some local cheese and some eggs. We're just trying to make it not like a one-stop place, you know, trying to encourage more people to come over. It's not just, you know, they're not just coming over for the milk. They can get some other things as well. So I think that does encourage them to come. Obviously, when they're in the supermarket, you'd probably walk past the milk at least twice, wouldn't you, on your way around? Just trying to get people out of the habit of getting their milk from the supermarket, and you know, buying it direct from the farmer. You know, giving us a fairer price, a better price. And I think it is just habit, isn't it? Really, just to, you know, it's so easy when you're in that shop, isn't it? Just to get everything. But yeah, so we're selling a few more things. Seem to be going quite well. There's a bit of a markup on them, so it's all helps. On a Saturday, the wife, we buy in some local fresh bread. We've got a bit of a pop-up bread shop and pastries, which try and draw a few more people in at the weekend, which I think is working. I think on a Saturday we seem to be shifting quite a bit of milk, which is good. So yeah, so no, it seems to be going not too bad. There we go from here. So no, but as it, so yeah, so this shed down here was just, it was, you know, the old Land Rover used to park in there. It was full of junk, so we've cleared that out, given it a lick of the paint, and it has actually worked quite well. People drive into the yard just off the road. They can leave the car in the yard and nip in there, get the milk. It does work well. I think it's worked quite well with the village. We've sort of, you know, it's we get quite a few comments from the village, from the folks. It's a great amenity to have local. It's sort of it's probably made people realise. There's a lot of people in the village that didn't actually realise there was a dairy farm here. I'm not quite sure what they thought that smell was, but yeah, it was a dairy farm. So yeah, so they've sort of, they come and get the milk. They can see sort of the cows over the gate when they have a look at the yard. And I think it's made them realise that it's not just a stinky farm. you know, there's some comments that it's great for them to get it direct from the farm. I think just back when we did the maize, usually the mud on the road usually creates a few letters from the parish council, or one letter from the parish council, and lots of negative comments on Facebook about, you know, what on earth is this mud doing on the road. And then this year, actually, there was a lot of mud on the road, but actually, yeah, we didn't get half as many comments. Someone, a local lady on the council, even suggested that the parish council write us a letter and tell us what a good job we did at sweeping up the mud. So that's sort of turned, I think it's turned the farm right round, as opposed to what people think of it. Sort of what people into it, which is good. So, and sort of advertising wise, we just on the Instagram and Facebook, it's free. You don't, you know, it's free advertising, and you've got such a wide audience. So we do things like, well, we've done one so far, sort of name the calf. We've just started crossing some of the Holsteins, Frisian Holsteins, crossing them with Montbéliards, just to try and get a more of a robust cow. So we have started doing name the calf with those, which I think's gone down quite well. We'll do it again with the heifers. We also do try and do regular updates. There's a local village magazine. We've had a bit of an article in there, and also in the local courier, we had a bit in there. So advertising wise, I think we've got a bit more. I think it's sort of a bit of a slow grower, slowly increasing the numbers through advertising, selling a bit more. Hopefully when the spring comes, it'll encourage people out a bit more. Obviously, with the virus at the minute, it might be discouraging a few people from sort of coming. We have got hand sanitizers, and people are quite good at social distancing, which is good. Sort of price wise for the milk, we were sort of umming and ahhing what should you price it as. I mean, it's got to be, it's got to be. There is a bit of work involved with better life, small amount of money. But there's a bit more. It takes a bit longer than what you think. You know, like washing these tanks. Sort of thinking about 150 litre, maybe a bit much, and then a pound was not enough. So we've gone for 120. We did have some comments at the start that it was cheaper at the shops. We have got a shop just up the road, 2 shops just up the road. What people don't realise, though, this isn't a product you can actually buy in the shop. Super fresh milk. You know, I mean, how old is it when it gets into the shop? It's got to be 2. Well, at least 2, isn't it? 3, 4. Is it 5 days? I'm not 100% sure on that, but when it gets into the vending machine, it's hours old, isn't it? So it's got a premium on it, hasn't it? So we've gone for 120. And I think, yeah, majority of people are willing to pay for 120 for the milk, which is good. And so yeah, so no, it seems to be going all right. So that's the vending machine there. So I think we've got a few things in the pipeline to draw some more people in, hopefully. Like I said, I think it would be a lot better when this virus has been sorted out. But yeah, I think that's about it, really. That's sort of what what we've done. Hopefully it's come across all right. I've never done anything like this before, but it might have just been a jumbled.
That's brilliant. Thank you, George. And we've got some interesting questions that have been coming through for you. I guess the one which I'll just fire at you quickly before we go to our next speaker, and then we'll draw some of the questions together because they'll be relevant for the next gentleman as well. But one that's topical of the moment is about milk and milk contracts. What's your milk buyers' thoughts of the fact that you're taking some of the milk and selling it off farm?
Well, I mean, to be honest, we haven't actually approached me about that one. I mean, at the minute, it's quite a fast it's something, it's something I've been to do.
Okay, well that's brilliant. We'll sweep over that quickly just in case they happen to be watching, and we don't wish to get you into any trouble at this point. Then, okay, thank you very much, George. I'm going to move to Jim Shanks now from Standhall Farm. Jim stood in and is taking the second spot today, and I think the interesting thing that we're going to see here is, if I just read the piece from his website, it says Standhall Farm was originally geared towards dairy production, but now is a hub of innovation, diversification and employment. And looking at your website, Jim, I think that you've obviously got an awful lot going on up with you at the moment. So I'll hand over to you, and let's listen to what you've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I'm assuming that the microphones are working fine. I think they are. I was just going to take you really through the journey that we went through on the diversification. I guess it all started around about 2008, 2009, where I was a young buck out of college for about 10 years, knew everything, and in reality didn't know that much at all. But I knew round about that time that that I was keen to do something else. I was passionate about dairy farming, but keen to do something else. I was involved in a lot of discussion groups. I did an Nuffield scholarship, and I did an Nuffield scholarship looking at energy from agriculture. And I travelled Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and the States. Now, I learned a lot about my subject, but I think one of the most important things that I did in that time was I took myself out of my comfort zone. I went to different countries that spoke different languages and different cultures, and quite often I was looking at different industries than what I was used to. So it really took me out of my my comfort zone. When I came back from that, I realised at the time we had a business in a dairy farm that the sun was shining on the business. We had single farm payment and we had a Tesco contract, and the sun was shining on that business. So I wanted to make sure that when the sun was shining, we made sure that in future years we were a bit better off as well, and to use that time. So after learning all about renewable energy, and this was just before that renewable energy was kicking off, I knew it was coming. I knew the feed-in tariffs were coming, but I set off on 3 projects: a biogas plant at my home farm here, a 0.5 megawatt wind turbine at my home farm, and I also went to a site where there was potential for 21 megawatts of wind generation. So I gained the knowledge through the Nuffield scholarship to push me in that direction, and I took some fairly hefty risks. And the risks was this, that I decided that, you know, I was going to put 2 years worth of a single farm payment into trying to push these projects through planning, and with the hope of creating a substantially diversified business at the end of it. And that was the risk, that it was around about 2 years worth of single farm payment. And at the time, I had about an 80% chance of success in all 3 projects. But I didn't get, and I didn't get for different reasons, but I didn't get with any of them at the end of 2 years. But I've always said, if I got those odds again, the 80%, and the reward was round about £55 million over 25 years, if I got those odds again in anything, I would take it time and again. So what happened was that the half megawatt wind turbine at home just was never going to fit. It was just a square peg in a round hole. But what I did learn from that is, well, what I did get was a substantially thicker skin than I had before. But I learned things like how you deal with the press, how you deal with the planners, and how you get people on side. And frankly, I became a bigger person going through that process, which was to help me in years to come. The large wind project I came horrifically close to, but ultimately no fruit there. Now the biogas was the interesting thing, because that was relatively easy to push through planning. So the biogas plant was using the slurry and a bit of crop, like the German model that I'd been and seen in the scholarship, and it was easy to push through planning. But my problem with the biogas unit was I just couldn't get a viable grid connection. My grid connection was £821,000, which was fine if I had the wind turbine and the biogas to share that between. But I took the view at the time that that just wasn't viable with the biogas on its own. So there I was, 2 years after having done a scholarship, spent a shed load of money, put a huge amount of time and effort, and gathered quite a few scrapes in the tin helmet through it, and got nothing. But two things happened in the summer of 2012. The first thing was I was looking outside. No, sorry. The first thing was I got a phone call from Scottish Power, and they says, Jim, listen, can we have a meeting with you, because we're tired of your agents hitting us on the head with a hammer, and we think what we're telling your agents is not what they're telling you. So I was delighted. We went up and had a meeting with Scottish Power. They described the difficulties that they had in getting a grid connection for me, but they also said that, look, they had a little bit of money coming down the line from the EU, and it was all about helping little guys like myself get a grid connection where they wouldn't normally get it, and find innovative ways. So they said what they were actually going to propose was lowering the voltage for 10,000 of their customers, as long as I was there at the other end of the line holding the voltage up with a biogas plant, which sounded fairly daunting for myself, but ultimately it got me a grid connection. And I had a glimmer of hope. I had a glimmer of hope then that I had a route forward and somewhere to go. Now there was still problems. Then after that, I had to get my family on board. Now beforehand, I'd never been good at bringing people with me, but I'd realised that, you know, I was going to have to get my family on board if I was going to spend over £1 million on a biogas plant. So I then at that point became a person that saw being challenged, my ideas being challenged as a positive thing, as a healthy thing. And what I did with Dad was I took him out to Germany and showed him what I had seen out in Germany, and he got the bug. He understood that what was happening. Yeah, you put the slurry in this end and the electricity comes out, and the German farmers were all doing it, and he came back enthused as I had came back from the scholarship. So we, after being challenged by my family and 3 prospective bank managers, I managed to get them all on board with the choice of three banks to go with. And in 2014, we built a biogas plant. And since that time, the biogas plant has went from strength to strength. Now, I mentioned another thing that happened in 2012, and that was I was looking out the window on a sodden landscape, as most farmers were, that it just rained and rained and rained that year. And I thought, gosh, would it not be great to build a roof over part of the shed and be able to turn that water on and off? And just as that happened, I think an article came in about the tomatoes at British Sugar, and I read that. But I remembered my time in the scholarship, that when I was traveling Sweden, Denmark and Germany, every time I saw a big biogas plant, there was a glass house next to it. Now, I knew what was happening. I knew that they were generating the electricity and they were using the heat and the carbon dioxide as byproducts. But I I thought, well, how on earth do I look into this? And the answer was staring me straight in the face. You just go and do what I'd done before. You go, you travel, you ask folk, you probe them for answers. And people, like any farmer out there, is generally delighted to tell you what they know. So I went to Sweden, no, I didn't. I went to Holland, France, England to look at glasshouses. And they all told me what they knew. I went to Scotland because Scotland used to grow tomatoes. But it had all finished, the glasshouse scene had all finished. And I said to all the Scottish growers, I said, well, why did you start and why did you stop? And as long as I could get round the reason as to why they stopped, which I believed I could, then it was, I thought just possibly that I had a go of a project in a glasshouse. By then, again, I had the bug. I'd been travelled around glasshouses and I saw what happened to them, and I had a natural enthusiasm that came on to me for glasshouse productions, and doors started opening like I'd never seen before. After having banging doors down through planning applications and such likes, the doors on this project were flying open. The planners said, yes, SEPA, not a problem. Marks and Spencer phoned up saying, yeah, we want to take all the produce. So it was quite an interesting experience. But I still had challenges along the way. But by that time, and through the process that I'd went through with planning, I'd learned better how to deal with challenges, how to think around them, and how to find a solution. I still had family reluctance on the glasshouse because my family really told me, they said, well, listen, we wouldn't be doing this glasshouse idea, but we'll support you whatever you do. And I said, well, that's not good enough. I can't go and spend another shed load of money on the back of that. And so what I did with mum and dad was I did the same as I'd done with dad and the biogas. I took them to places that I'd seen and let them see what I'd seen traveling around looking at glasshouses. And right enough, they came back and said, well, actually, we don't think this is that bad an idea. We had other problems, like the biogas that we had wasn't going to be big enough to power the heat and the carbon dioxide in the glasshouse. But again, other ways of working around that. There was renewable subsidies for wood chip burning, and that could fill the gap. So we ended up looking at and installing 2 megawatts of renewable heat installation in the scope of a wood chip boiler. So by the time 2015 came and I was sitting around the table with all the figures on it and looking and showing my homework to my family and looking at an extra 2.1 million spend and another 400,000 spend to get the tomatoes in there, my family was looking back at me saying, well, what the hell are you waiting for? Get it built. So we did that. And in 2016, we built a 4-acre glasshouse on time, on budget. And in one fell swoop, we became the Scottish tomato industry. Now, we still had issues, and I'm one of these people that gets out in the morning and sort of finds the problems, and maybe I see the problems before I see the positive side, which is why it's great to have, my wife is the one that will always say, yeah, you look at the problems, but you're not looking at the positives as to what happens, what we've done and what we've achieved. And it sometimes takes heart to point out, we've got positives like we've established a 4-acre glasshouse, and we're actually out yielding against all odds. We're out yielding some of the established glasshouses in England's south coast. We're running a farm that 10 years ago produced 1.6 million litres of milk, and it now produces 1.8 million litres of milk. It produces 1,600 megawatts of renewable electricity, 9,500 megawatts of renewable heat, and 750 tonnes of tomatoes that's sold into Morrison as their extra special range. We've turned what I believe is the least productive 4 acres of land in the farm into arguably one of the most productive 4 acres of land in Scotland. We've increased staff from 4 to 40, and very proudly we are the only glasshouse that employs solely 100% UK labour. Our EBITDA figure has increased 9-fold, and that we've reduced debt accordingly. We're almost at a third of the debt that we are when we were at our peak. So that's all coming down nicely. In normal years, we now open our doors for an open evening, and we have 300 people come to see what we're doing, because they all think it's a wee bit like the Eden Project up here. We had Princess Anne officially open the glass house, and a year after we had Prince Philip visit as well. And more importantly, what I've done more than anything else, we've now got 3 great kids and a dog, and that's brilliant. And so the family is just, whether it be my parents or my wife and my kids, is the family is the most important thing that I have on the farm. And one other wee story that I'd just like to add, that way back when I was applying for wind turbine applications, there was a wee shelf in the local shop that had objection letters this deep, and there for everybody to see. Well, now that wee shelf sells tomatoes. So I've managed to turn that round, and that's something that I'm very, 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 very proud of. We're not finished there. We're always keep looking towards the future. I always say, you never see what's in front of you if you're looking at the ground, and you've got to look up and look for things to see them happen. And so, but we do think that selling tomatoes and electricity is a fairly good business to be in. But on the same time, I'm still as passionate about the dairying. The emotional connection I have to the cows, I always say, can be as much a blessing and a curse in equal measure. But I do like the dairy. I do still. It does still excite me the way that it did excite me. But we are looking in other directions for different ways forward. And a lot of people ask me, I say, well, what is it? What is the most important thing in diversification? And I would say 2 things. One, doing homework. And if you do your homework and you're enthused about what you're doing and you're going to make it work, then that natural enthusiasm will just carry you through, and that homework becomes fun to do. And plenty of farmers and people from other sectors, if you take an interest in their business, they're happy to tell you everything that they do. And the other thing that I think is just so brutally important is honesty. That we can all make figures work. We can all make figures work the way we want them to work, and the way that we think and we hope they're going to work. But sometimes the brutal honesty has to come down and take you in the way that you should be going, and not the way you maybe want to be going. I always at this point quote my old headmaster. He was a man that did a lot of rugby coaching by the name of Jim Telfer, and he was my headmaster at Hoyk. And he's quoted a lot for the speech that he gave in the Lions tour in 1997, when he said to the players, he said that the honest player gets out of bed in the morning and looks himself in the mirror and says, I'm going to get better and better and better. And he said, only at the end of the day will the honest player be the one that's still on their feet. And that's the way I look at business and at life, that if you're not honest to start with, then you're building foundations on sand. So I've learned to be as honest as I can with myself, and hopefully that stands me in good stead going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. That was absolutely brilliant to hear that story that you've and the journey that you've been on there. What I'll do now, if that's okay, is I'll chap over to Chris Lyons, and we'll have Chris's piece. Chris is from Innovate Lead, Agricultural Innovate UK Innovation Funding. Innovation and funding. So Chris, I know you've got a few slides up ready to go, so I'll hand over to you, and we'll speak in a minute.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Peter. I will just talk a little bit for a very brief moment about me and why I am here talking to you this morning. What do you want to hear about Innovate UK? Well, before I do, as Peter said, my name's Chris Lyons. I'm actually on a family beef and sheep farm. We're probably about 20 minutes up the road from Peter. And my real relevance, I think, reference diversification is what I did early in my career. So out of university, I went and worked for rural surveyors. obviously as land agents, we quite often get involved with diversification projects, but it's from there I went on to get involved into Southwest Regional Rural Development Programme for England, and we were constantly supporting farmers to diversify and to claim some of that rural development funding. Last thing you want to see is that go back to Europe. So then I went on to run some regional programs and some national programs. But as Peter said, now working for Innovate UK. But what I was just going to go through, and I think we're just missing that one slide, but I had some illustrations of some tips about diversification, just for a quick moment or two. We've heard from Jim, there's no argument. Energy markets aren't going to go away. They are there, they are going to develop, and there's going to be more and more opportunities for landowners to get into those markets. We've seen solar panels go up left, right and centre onto buildings. The feed-in tariffs are disappearing, but we still need to think about those opportunities for energy production. There's a project that I got involved with where a farmer converted an ex-pig farm building into a swimming pool. A timeshare swimming pool, no less. So if you wanted that swimming pool at 9 o'clock in the morning for 20 minutes, you have that swimming pool in the morning on your own for 20 minutes every Monday morning at 9 o'clock. But the real reason that farmer looked at that opportunity is that he had a field of miscanthus that no longer had a market, because as we perhaps all know, the miscanthus market was great to start with, and then the buyers disappeared. So went down that route. So from one perspective of finding an end use for his miscanthus to heat a swimming pool and his farmhouse potentially as well, we created a brand new diversification to heat the swimming pool, and has really done great things for his business. So that was one particular example. I was going to talk about wedding venues as well. Obviously not too many people getting married at the moment due to COVID, but it's a huge market. I think it's about 10 billion at the moment, the UK wedding market. And when I was back doing my diversification projects, we were talking to a farmer in Wiltshire who had a fantastic venue to convert, but obviously it's going to cost a lot of money, and there are already a number of other wedding venues in the locality. What we did is looked at the market and to find a real market niche. The pink pound is significant. So this was the gay and lesbian market at the time, and he was going to make his particular venue solely for that marketplace. And on the basis of identifying and realising that there was a market need, we were able to get him a rather large grant for the diversification of that opportunity, which was fantastic. I don't know if we've all seen the TV recently, and there was someone there with some goats on the television. And I think it's important to look at opportunity. If opportunity arises, go for it. So I think this lady, Dr. McCarthy, managed to raise £50,000 over a few months by hiring out her goats to Zoom calls, so much as we're on now, to put a goat on a Zoom. I thought they were kidding when I first read about this, but no, this is actually something that's happened. And when I did a bit more research, you can do it with a cow, you can do it with all sorts of pets. But just thinking about your farm and thinking about pets and animals, the pet market is expected to get to 7 billion in the UK in 2021. Could you be potentially part of that market? Everything from equine to kennels, catteries, and there's some examples around my part of the world where an enterprising farmer has fenced off a particular part of land just to let dog owners come and exercise their dogs in that particular area. So huge opportunities, and I don't want to be sort of negative to the world of COVID, but there has been very much an uplift in green burial sites as well. Very much a premium end of the market, but just looking at that opportunity and just some key points that we always push back in previous roles around diversification. Get advice from your trusted advisors. You've already heard George talk about, you know, what he's done, getting his family involved, and also Jim. But, you know, you've got to talk to those bank managers or relationship managers that they perhaps are now. Get the family involved, speak to your land agents, speak to your planning advisors, because potentially, you know, there's not much funding for diversification around at the moment. We know that. We know that the countryside productivity grants finished last year. If you're into, you know, local action groups, your lag funding, that's pretty much gone. There might be a little bit left, but at the moment it's gone. So keep an eye on it. But you know, we're minded that you know, we're just going to move forward and think positively to all this good stuff. So as has been said, do your sums, do your market research. These days, a risk register is always good to look at as well. You know, what's positive, what's not. And just a little funny one to go back to. We did get a grant for someone that did a green burial site, and they wanted to acquire a piece of machinery as part of that. And if you've got grant guidance, do make sure you speak to your advisors and you understand what it's all about, because you might think there's some key specialist grave digging machinery out there, and indeed there is, but don't just buy a mini digger, because a mini digger can do everything, and the grant awarding bodies won't like that. So that's a little bit of an unofficial start to my presentation. So I will now get on into my own main presentation and talk to you about Innovate UK. So as Peter said, I am the innovation lead for agriculture in Innovate UK, but what perhaps is Innovate UK or indeed UKRI. So if I can move on a slide. There's some slides that I've just talked through. Let's move again. So UK Research and Innovation, that's who I work for. We work with the government to invest over 7 billion a year in research and innovation by partnering with academia and industry to make the impossible possible through the UK's 9 leading academic and industrial funding councils. We create knowledge with impact. So Innovate UK, that's part of research and innovation. So we drive productivity and growth by supporting new businesses to realise potential of new technologies, develop ideas and make them a commercial success. As we all know, to stay competitive as an advanced economy, we need to do things that others cannot do, or do things in different and better ways. Innovate UK's mission, therefore, is growth, productivity, jobs and exports. It's never been more important. Recent funding calls have highlighted and accelerated agri-tech technologies in response to the COVID-19 challenges and opportunities that the industry has faced. From developing labour supply chains and platforms to therefore match employer and provider requirements, to advancing development of AI and robotics in the field. Innovate UK have had their busiest and most active time since its creation, and we continue to push forward on that front. We are the UK's innovation agency. So what I want to just focus on today is, I know I've not got long, but just very quickly talk to you about the government's investment in UK agri-tech. And I know innovation's coming up later in the week, and you're also going to hear from one of these centres in the next couple of days as well. But I just wanted to focus, because not everyone's heard of them, not everyone knows where some of this funding goes to. So back in 2015-16, agri-tech centres were established out of the UK's agri-tech strategy back in 2013. And they were there to join up existing excellence and invest in new innovative resources and research that do not exist elsewhere. So clearly, to address challenges no part of the sector can address on its own, and to position the UK as a global leader in sustainable food production. Now, I don't know if you can see these on your screens, but basically we've got the 4 centres listed by colour there. You have got the blue of CL, you've got the red of agri-metrics, the yellow of the agri-engineering precision innovation, agri-epi otherwise perhaps known as, and then CHAP, the remaining colour there. So what I'm going to do is just talk to you about the 2 that I think are most relevant to the dairy sector, and that is CL and epi-agri, sorry. So CL is Europe's largest applied animal network. We've not moved on yet, have we? Move on. There we go. And the point of CL is to provide access to world-leading livestock research across the UK. It's creating valuable collaborations, research capability within industry. And importantly, and this is what we're seeing across the whole of research in every element of Innovate UK, UKRI, it's all about using less resources, maximising productivity and minimising impact on the environment. Clearly supporting production of affordable, safe, nutritious, high quality food and helping those who produce the food to do so profitably and sustainably. And there's a key point there at the bottom of delivering climate smart food systems. And what makes up this network? Well, there we can see right across the UK, from Scotland right down to Devon and Cornwall, 12 research academic partners, which has 800 researchers. There's 60 industry members, multi-departmental engagement with government, and significant value of projects. I just want to talk through a couple of those very briefly because I know time is going on. So there we have an example working with the RAFT organisation developing a new rapid mastitis diagnostic solution. And again, one of the key things that comes out of these centres is the opportunity to try to tap into some funding to fund all of this good stuff. So there we can see in that particular instance that this project is supported through Innovate UK and the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. Another example there with the University of Nottingham is looking at understanding space to enhance health and welfare and productivity of dairy cattle. And it's quite interesting that they've already found that they think that perhaps we're already giving dairy cattle too much space. But this is the first ever study of its kind worldwide. So it's some really interesting activity that's taking place in these centres. And a couple of quotes and a couple of other points there. Grass Check is one other project that's come out producing data that's freely available to everyone. www.grasscheckgb.co.uk. Go there and do take a look. But this enables evidence-based predictions of grass growth to help farmers to manage pastures more effectively and increase the quality and utilisation of pasture. And some key quotes there. Draw your attention to the one at the bottom. We now consider ourselves to be grass farmers more than we're cow farmers. We utilise the cow to grow the grass we grow. And that's one of the farmers that's involved on this particular project. So that's about CL. Moving forward, just in the last couple of minutes from me, the agri-epi centres. So you may have come across these. So Scotland's Royal College up in Dumfries, Harper Adams University in Shropshire, and the King's Hay farm down in Somerset. And just bear with me. Dumfries, that's all about the young stock. Shropshire is obviously Harper Adams, provides adaptable buildings for cow behaviour monitoring, and down with King's Hay in Somerset, that looks at robotic milking with precision grazing. And there's a whole network of satellite farms involved, as well as international farms, some smart farms in New Zealand, China and Paraguay. So just a couple of examples of what's going on in the agri epicentres. So here's the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. You may see a moving video down your right hand corner, and this is all about robotics and sensor technology combined with state-of-the-art housing and precision grazing. Indeed, this is the first of its kind fabric roof in the country, which means that it can emit 20% natural light and thus only needs lighter steels for the uprights, and obviously, you know, creates less impact in terms of building construction. Moving on. Here we have the automated feeder. So a key advantage of the, and again, one of only a few in the country, but this automated feed kitchen has silages which are loaded into the moving floor feeder feed tables, which are then dispersed pre-programmed each day with concentrates into the rail-mounted feed dispenser, which delivers the ration to the selected sections of the building. The system is currently set to feed the milking herd 14 times a day. Yes, that's 4 times a day, which obviously ensures that that ration is always fresh. And importantly for you, the farmer, you know, there's much less in the way of wastage. And as an example of the use of sensor technology, the feed bins you can see pictured there are mounted on weigh cells to enable accurate feed use and provide the feed mill with data so they can optimize their supply logistics. So hopefully less vehicles traveling around our countryside. That's me nearly done, but just one final slide reference agri epi, and that is the focus on, there we go, net zero. Whoops, we've gone one too many. Let's see if I can go back. And the circular dairy vision. We know how important this is and how agriculture, dairy in particular, is being sort of talked about in terms of its carbon impact. But this is really where we can start to look at how this can work as a circular economy with a circular vision. It's all listed there. We can circulate some of these slides after the event because I'm conscious that we're nearly up to an hour and I'm sure there's some Q&A. So I will stop there and hand back to Peter.
Thanks, Chris. Another really interesting presentation there. Thank you very much. We have got some questions, but I am conscious that we are up to our hour mark. However, if I could invite Jim and George to join us again on screen. As long as everybody's happy, I'm quite happy that we should continue going on for a few minutes to answer some of the questions that that have been put up on the screen. So George, I don't know if you're, there you go, brilliant job, excellent. I'm going to just start with a little bit of funding. We've heard a little bit about funding from Chris and some of the challenges around grant funding and stuff that may not be available just at the moment, but I'm sure as we find our way in the new Brexit market, the UK will look to bring more innovation funding and stuff in. But for both the projects that we've heard as well today, two different scales of funding requirement, but what sort of return on investments and time for payback are we looking at across the different things? George, what are you looking at for your system, and how long do you think it'll take to get that return on the money you've invested?
Well, we sort of invested quite a substantial amount. Probably, I mean, all in, it was probably pushing sort of 100,000 probably. I mean, we probably haven't really got a payback time as such, really. We were lucky enough we didn't have to borrow anything. So in terms of payback, yeah, we probably haven't really got anything as such. As long as we can see that the whole business is going the right way, is shifting a bit of milk, then
Okay.
And that's how, yeah.
Brilliant. Jim, what would you and your family put on as the criteria for returns?
Well, I guess, you know, I wouldn't have a criteria as such, because if something's safer, then you allow it to be paid back over a wee while. If if the enterprise we're going into is fairly safe, then it's going to be a wee bit longer. But if it's a wee bit riskier, then you'd be looking for a wee bit quicker. The biogas, we got in right when we should have got in, and the biogas has just been a tremendous business. But all in all, over everything that we've done, that we're looking about 6 years, 6-7 years, and getting been out. And we generally tend to pay back. I'm quite what I'd call Presbyterian about debt, is that if we borrow money, we pay it back, and we pay it back as quickly as we can. It was mother and father got it was sort of squeaky bum time in the early 80s when they put a new milking parlour dairy and bought my grandfather a house that when interest rates went up to 15%, then it got a wee bit difficult around that times. And I always say if things go in cycles, and we might not see 15% again, but I wouldn't bet against it. We're in economic times that's never been, well, I say it's never been seen before. But yeah, I just like to get the head down, get the debt paid back, and have my hands free rather than having it hang over. I always say that the two D's, drink and debt, both of them enhance your life, but too much of either of them will kill you. So it's just trying to get a balance.
Thanks, Jim. And while we're talking on funding and that sort of thing, normally, when there's grants and that sort of thing available, what sort of level of funding can people hope to get if there is funding available, Chris? There's, with the different schemes that government will put out, whether it be for on-farm innovations or on the milk vending side of things, or bigger projects, what would be the typical sort of funding that a government scheme would normally put together?
That's $1 million question, isn't it, Peter? Thank you for that. So yes, back in the days of perhaps rural development program money, there's a lot that was around about the 40-50%. So everything's typically always had to have a match of some perspective. Obviously, some of the projects that I've just mentioned that are being engaged with around Agri-EPI and CL, these agri-tech centres, where they've got research partners involved, what you end up with is slightly different percentages for the different partners that get involved with those funds. So it's very difficult to say an exact amount, but I would always suggest that matched funding was highly likely. I did have a conversation with a few folk from different organisations that I've been involved with in the past, and they would very much suggest that people do think about getting involved with some of the trials that are coming up in terms of DEFRA's trial of what these programs might look like, and try and focus those to make sure they are getting what the industry needs, but also to collaborate as well. My intelligence suggests that collaboration is going to be a key moving forward in terms of bringing more farmers together, more primary producers together.
Okay, thanks. In the planning stages of the projects we've heard about, there's obviously been a lot of involvement. Jim mentioned the planning applications and that sort of stuff. But George, just looking at yours quickly, the EHO, Environmental Health Office, and that sort of thing. And do you need planning permission for the milk vending sites? How does your engagement with the local authorities work on that?
So no, we haven't had to get any planning for the vending machines. They're just in an old shed that we had on farm. EHO, the Environmental Health Officer, we spoke with her before we did any work at all, just to see what they would require, what she was after, just so we didn't waste any money or time doing something then for her to turn around and say that wasn't what she wanted. So we were in, we spoke with her quite a bit in the planning of it all, and she was very helpful. And she comes out randomly and takes milk tests, samples to test, and then we also send off milk samples every 3 months to make sure the pasteuriser is working. correctly.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Jim, you've obviously had some challenges with some of your ideas at the beginning there. If things are obviously changing constantly, if starting out now, what main things are different, and would you still do what you have done? And going on with that, considering the challenges with the grid connection, did you ever consider doing biomethane straight to grid?
Just to take your last first there, that yes, I mean, I looked at everything. I looked at that I was pushing doors open and well, trying to push doors open that sometimes, more often, they didn't open for me. And yes, biomethane, but we're so far away from a gas grid line that wasn't an option anyway. I went through absolutely everything to try and get around that grid connection, but we just are in an awkward place in the country. And at the time I was doing presentations on renewable energy, and I always was leaving the caveat that, goodness, it's not for everyone. That if it doesn't fit, don't do it. People assumed that I was saying that it was the great messiah and such likes, but no, if it didn't work, don't do it. I still don't regret the risks I take. I think that you've got to push doors open, and that you've got to accept that not every door is going to open. And anybody that tells you it does is a liar. For every success, there's been a few doors that have been tried to be pushed and just haven't opened. So I don't regret pushing the doors open, because then I wouldn't have found out the ones that did open. So I guess that's, yeah.
Brilliant, thanks. Chris, just sort of looking at that and talking about the planning aspects and that sort of thing. What would you suggest, and what sort of organisations are the go-to people to help get advice on the multitude of different things that farmers might be able to do to look at doing on farm? Where would you head if you wanted to try and get some good sound advice?
Absolutely. Well, I think what I'd always say is go to multiple sources just to check that what one person is saying is absolutely spot on. But you'll find there's absolute wealth of information on the internet. Now, unfortunately, what the government seem to have done recently is with the small productivity grants, there's not actually been anyone on the ground that can actually come out and help explain things. So going to your trusted advisors, your farm agents, perhaps even your banks, seem to have a very good grip on how these things work these days. But obviously the NFU as well, if you're members of the NFU or the CLA, talk to those trusted advisors. But just as importantly these days, keep an eye on those social media channels. There's so much going on in terms of Twitter, especially, a lot of farmers that are on the money know what's going on, and they'll be on these channels and they'll know where to go and find that information. So yes, in short, speak to your trusted advisors and your industry representations like your NFU and your CLA. Okay,
thank you. Just looking at the flip side of the innovations that have gone on and the investments that have gone on here, and possibly wastage and that sort of thing. Have any of the projects that George or Jim have looked at caused wastage issues, such as milk that's got to be disposed of, or other issues that you hadn't planned originally, and that you would say to people, if you're going into something, look at some of the byproducts that come out the back end of what's happening to manage that? George, I mean, how much of the milk that you pasteurize are you having to dispose of separately?
I mean, we're looking at pasteurising every other day to keep it fresh. So every other day, whether there's milk left or not, it comes out of the machine. So any waste milk is obviously wasted. We do try and get it. We've got a rough idea of what we sell daily, and you sort of pasteurise sort of accordingly. There are days where you do run out, and so obviously people come and they leave empty-handed. And there are days where you do have to throw a bit away. But yeah, it's just a bit of a game to sort of work out what you're going to sell on the days, really.
Okay, thanks. Jim, any sort of thoughts you've got on unexpected consequences of the projects you've completed?
Yeah, I mean the biggest problem we had was that we went with a buyer in our first year for tomatoes that didn't take all they said they were going to take, and we then went in with Morrison's and Asda the year after, and that was a fairly big problem when you were getting a phone call in the Monday morning saying, yeah, we've got plenty of stock here, we don't need any more tomatoes, and I'm left going, but you said you're going to take them, and I've got 10 tons of tomatoes sitting here, what the hell am I meant to do with them? But there is these things, and looking back now, when you kind of realise how difficult it is for startup businesses, then you kind of look back and think, God, was I really wise doing it? But you get there, and there is dark times when you get those phone calls and you don't have it. But I'm always a big thing. I mean, being a Scottish and being a farmer, I'm fairly tight, and that I don't like to see waste. So I was one of the best farms, and it ties into the circular economy, the circular farming thing. Was I went to a farm in America, and it was about the 2,500 cow dairy supplying the AD plant that supplied the glass house, but he had the fish in between, so he was using the fish effluent. Then his dead calves were being fed to the fish, and he was everything. There was no wastage, and I like that, because I always think it's a great way to make money. If you can turn somebody else's waste into money, then that's a bloody good business to be in. So we try and use everything time and time again to get the best out of it and the least waste out of it. We're always seeing if there's links between the glass house and the biogas and the dairy, and in general, we have much less waste in terms of dairy feed. We can put that into the digester for good use, and there's no wastage of the tomatoes now, not a jot.
Brilliant, well done. George, just a couple of specific questions for you, really, on the milk vending. What sort of catchment area are you looking at for the vending side? So, I mean, how big is the village, and how far would people be travelling to come to your vending machine?
So the village, what we are now, about 2,300 maybe residents in the village. So yeah, we've got quite a few on the doorstep, but also there are people sort of coming from sort of Coventry, which is it's got to be a 20-minute journey, and also same sort of the other side as well, sort of a few people from sort of Banbury, Daventry, which would be sort of the same distance. So it is drawing people in from sort of quite a far distance, really.
And how do they get to hear about you?
I guess it's either word of mouth or social media. So that's sort of the social media is the main advertising at the minute. I would say, look, if anyone was thinking about it, thinking about if there is one near you, I think that would. I think if someone else was to set one up sort of near us, I think that would have a big impact on our sales. So it's just, you know, it's. But yeah, people are willing to travel for the milk.
And a very technical question on vending machines. What's the reliability of the unit like? Got a couple of people asking what the reliability of the actual vending system is like.
Touch wood, it's been reasonably reliable. There were a few niggles at the start. I mean, there was one day in particular it seemed to just play up. I'd have quite happily have chucked it in the slurry pit, to be honest. But yeah, there's been a few niggles, but we sort of got through them. It hasn't been out of action for days. I think the longest we had a bit of a breakdown. I think we lost probably half a day. But touch wood, they have got a technician that he's very good at answering the phone, and he can talk you through a lot of the problems.
Brilliant, thank you. Jim, just we are going to wrap this up in a minute. I'll let everybody get back to the day job, but just quickly, main source for the AD plant? That's okay.
Jenny out. Jenny out. Sorry about that.
That's not a problem. Yeah, I just had a question in. What's the main source of the AD plant?
It's slurry and whole crop rye. We're just not far enough south to be able to grow maize, but rye's been a pretty good equivalent, and it's just a German model. It's just using that slurry because it's free, and it's a great source for the bugs, and using the whole crop rye just to top it up and make sure we get that gas output. So it works really, really well. I'm almost kind of falling on my feet how well it works. So it's just a standard German model that the farmer owns it, and that's very important because then you know exactly what's going into it. That if you're starting to put foot bath solution down the slats and something goes wrong in the biogas, then you know about it because you can follow that. So yeah, the slurry and the crop works well together.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, guys. One last question, just as a quick for all three of you. You're looking at the innovation and diversification. What would be the key thing that you would say to people? The one key thing that if someone was wanting to diversify or look at something different, what's the main thing that they ought to be doing? So, Chris, I'll kick that one off with you first.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I think I'd definitely concentrate on market research, definitely. And just to take your earlier question back again, I spent a lot of time talking about these centres. They're all open access centres, and farmers can go and see them. If you want to go and see that Southwest Dairy Development Centre or anything like that, go and have a look. Duncan down there would be happy to invite you down, as would the guys that run the other centres. So yeah, market research, and don't forget to have a look at these centres.
George?
Yeah, again, lots of homework, research. I did sort of cold call quite a few people that got machines just to find out some info on them. Also treat the wife to days out, and we go and visit other people that have got these machines around the country just to get ideas and see what's working for them. I think you just do your homework. Just talk to as many people as possible. People, the pasteurising companies that put them in, people that got the vending machines. Yeah, just talk to people and see what they think.
Brilliant. And Jim?
Just going to reiterate, I guess what's been said is homework, and just go out, no matter how far away it is. Go out, pick up the phone, look in the internet, but speak to people, because people will speak back. People will tell you everything. That they enjoy it when you take an interest in their business, and they respond to that. And if you've got the natural enthusiasm for what you're into, then things will move. But you never ever see what's in front of you if you're looking at the ground. Keep your eyes open and do your homework.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to three speakers this morning for some really interesting and positive thoughts and comments on diversification and innovation. So, thank you very much. I hope everybody listening has found that useful. Tomorrow's session, we will be looking at worldwide grazing perspectives and embracing technology. That's going to kick off at 10:30 as well. So I hope, like I say, I hope you've all had a interesting morning, and thank you again to our speakers. Thank you very much.